Hey kids, howdy, and welcome to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. That is me, and it is September. We are speaking today about September 1st through the 7th, first week of the month. And it's a little bit out of the frying pan and into the fire, you know. The first 2 months of the summer were rock'em sock'em, but so is September because it's eclipse season.
Okay.
No, in fact, while the first eclipse is, on Sunday, while the last new moon was not an eclipse, it was the startup of the lunar cycle that includes an eclipse as a full moon. And then the next new moon is an eclipse. In some ways, that makes the wormhole of eclipse season sort of like endless. I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the full moon. Total lunar eclipse later on in the podcast. First, let's do a question about eclipses. Hi, Michael. This is Sarah from Portland. I just have to say your podcast has been such a blessing for me. I listen every week, and it really helps me feel grounded with everything going on in the world. Thank you. I keep hearing so many mixed things about eclipses. Some people say not to do any rituals or manifestations during them. Others say they're like supercharged new and full moons. Honestly, I don't know what to believe, and I feel a little overwhelmed. Can you talk about the right way to approach eclipse energy so I don't feel like I'm doing it wrong? Love this question.
Is there a wrong way?
Well, that's
right
the first.
Way?
That's exactly the first
Even?
Answer is there's never a wrong way. Right? The planets don't cause anything. If they did, there would be a wrong way. Mm-hmm. Right? If there was a one-directional deposit of energy and we were at the affect of that, yes, I can imagine. But that's not how it is. The planets don't cause anything. They reflect things. So just as like when we do shadow work, we talk about interactions between two people as being like projections. What's inside of me might get triggered when I'm interacting with somebody else, though they might say the words I'm, responding. That person is a mirror reflection of me in that moment. Then you get to the sort of next step where the collective is a mirror of all of us. Right? I don't love what's happening in America, but I certainly respect the fact that this is America. This is what it is. It's a reflection of the collective. And then the same thing happens. Us on Earth is reflected by the movement of the planet. So I know people don't think that that's possible because we're so small, they're so big and very far away, but it's still one soup that we're in. It has geometrical movement. It shifts and changes as we do. And just as eclipse season is intense and transformational, and we experience eclipse season as intense and transformational, it's not because of the eclipses. It's just a perfect reflection of some sort of a weird rhythm that happens every 6 months where it gets more intense. So you can't do anything wrong. Now, there are some old ideas in astrology that you should not do manifestation rituals during an eclipse new moon, or that you should not approach the full moon in a way that I would normally ascribe. This is a superstitious construct, right?
The manifestation?
The idea that you shouldn't, that you should avoid doing. So from my perspective, and I know a lot of traditional astrologers might disagree with me, but a lot of modern astrologers will agree with me that there's no need to hold back. These ideas were created when we didn't have technology. We didn't have a ubiquitous understanding of the unconscious. So eclipses still held for the human race that aura of mystery of like, oh my God, these are so like profound. Maybe the world is ending. And that sensibility remained as part of eclipse consciousness up until like very recently, because we're only just very recently getting into technology and the modern world. So I, as an astrologer operating now, I'm not interested in the tropes that feel very superstitious, like don't do anything in an eclipse because they're too potent.
Right.
Okay, so that's nonsense for a modern world where we've been inside and upside down and seeing outer space and inner space. We no longer have to worry about eclipses being problematic. They are simply amplified new moons and amplified full moons. So my attitude is have the fuck at it. Set powerful intentions in a new moon eclipse, knowing that they have more sort of mojo to take hold and create what you desire. Lie down in this full moon coming up to like let the psychic surgery happen, because that's what full moons do. And then the eclipse energy can just make it greater, more transformational because of the amplification. So Sarah, you can't do it wrong. Have at it. And though you didn't ask this, I'll say this too. A lot of people say to me, uh-oh, I missed the new moon. Can I not set intentions? Right. It's like, no, honey, you should set intentions with every breath you take. And then when we do it on the new moon, we line up our desire to start something new with the solar system's sort of movement of doing the same. So manifest, intend, always, and then have at it, the eclipse. You definitely want to come to my global healing meditation this Thursday night. It's 7 p.m. Pacific time. It's an hour long. It's completely free. I've been doing it for years, since 2020. And I talk all about the month's astrology, and then I lead a little meditation. One of the things I'm going to be talking about on Thursday is that all of the personal planets are changing signs this month. That is a kind of extra, atypical energy. Right? If they spread out the personal planet ingresses so they're not so close together, each one might sort of, bump us in an energetic way, probably more unconscious than conscious, but we do have an impact when a personal planet changes signs. But to have all three of them do it in Mercury twice, because he's going to be moving pretty fast. It starts with tomorrow, Tuesday. Mercury is going to move into Virgo. Now, instead of being there for his typical 2.5 weeks, right now he's at his speediest, right? He's far away from the last retrograde, so he's no longer being dragged by what's behind. And then the next one is so far ahead that he's not anticipating by slowing down. So he's only going to be in Virgo for about 16 days, which is a little faster than usual. Very happy in this sign. This is one of his ruling signs. And this is the sign where Mercury gets to be precise. Like Gemini is the other ruling sign for Mercury, where it's just the invention of words. So that's fantastic, right? But it's just the words and the capacity to communicate and connect. In Virgo, it's where we take ideas and words and create precise and masterful communication, where we're organizing our thoughts and ideas into something, solid and usable, if you will. And don't forget about Chiron's co-rulership over Virgo. Mercury brings the precision and the way to put language together in a powerful construct. Chiron's rulership says this is a healing passage for the planet of the mind. Everything is perception, right? Which means you can choose how you're going to perceive life. So with Mercury in Virgo, choose health, choose a perception that all is well, I mean, I may be speaking to myself, right? Chronic fatigue, lots of challenges. It's like I can either choose to see it as a horrible thing that's happening and leaving me in great despair, or I can see it as an opportunity to call in healing energy using my mind and my perceptions in a directed way. Have at that if there's anything in your body that needs a little healing and adjustments. And just know that communication is going to be as precise and powerful and effective as is possible. Now, there's a pattern in Sunday's eclipse involving Jupiter and the nodes of the moon. Now, when we get to that eclipse, this pattern will still be in place, though it first hits on Wednesday, which is why I'm talking about it sort of separately, because the energy of Jupiter easy opposing the nodes, which is the pattern I'm talking about, has its own sort of like thrust of reflection in the first 3-4 days of the week that it's not separate from the eclipse, but it's worthy of discussing as something to consider about the sort of hump day of the week, that there's this like movement, manifestation, abundance transit. Talk about manifestation. You want to do some manifesting? Do it on Wednesday, because the planet of manifestation is Jupiter. He is in Cancer, the sign of his exaltation. So he's like very generous with the prosperity and the expansion in this sign. He's connecting in with the nodes of the moon in what we call an easy opposition. Now, what that means is I'll start by defining opposition. Any opposition is a tension, a dynamic tension that must be and will be reckoned with. Right? Two forces that oppose, they have to do something. They have to crash or swerve or dance or explode. So in that way, you can consider any opposition to be a tense energy that we have to navigate. So the nodes of the moon are the thrust of energy that generate eclipses. So it's a lot about the nodes this week, but they also represent the flow of the collective from the past to the future, where the south node is what we're coming away from and the north node is where we're going next. So what Jupiter is doing is breaking that opposition up into a sextile with the south node and a trine with the north. Now, this is really helpful at this moment because we're in a release-oriented full moon eclipse on Sunday. So that means the unconscious is wanting to let go of stuff down there that's sort of inhibiting our forward movement. And certainly Jupiter's like, hey, I want to give you all sorts of stuff, but you got too much gunk inside. Clean some of that out and let me see what I can do for you, right? Full moon lets us clean shit out, and the presence of Jupiter sextiling the south node means we're going to have a little work to do to release the past. Sextiles imply there's like behavior that needs to be, engaged in order to release the past. And this doesn't have to be deep and powerful. This can just be being aware of what you're looking to let go of, but there's effort needed because a 60-degree angle implies that. But what's lovely, and this will be even lovelier in the partial solar eclipse, that's a new moon in 2 weeks, 3 weeks from now, is that Jupiter is trining the north node. Trines need no work. They are an effortless way that two planets, and in this case, a planet and a point, are both singing out loud and in harmony. So Jupiter in his manifestation, mojo moment in Cancer, trining the north node says that anything we do to be clear about where we want to go, to be clear about what we're releasing to help us get there, will be funneled directly into our forward walk without hesitation, without hindrance, without, holding us back. I'm being very hyperbolic. Obviously, life is still life.
Right.
But the essence of the energy says we got to work a little bit to release the past. We are floating forward powerfully, guided by Jupiter's sense that there's great possibility in this moment, even if it's terrifying and chaotic. And Wednesday, so therefore Tuesday and Thursday, this energy rises up, not encumbered by the intensity of the eclipse that will follow like 4 or 5 days later. And so take a look at the movement in your world and know that you can sort of participate with Jupiter's largesse by focusing on what do you want to create for yourself in that manifestation way, and do yourself a little manifestation ritual on Wednesday. Now, for those of you who are enjoying the fact that this year and maybe next year, I'll be talking about some retrogrades in the outer planets. I've said this before. The reason I'm going to speak into the movement in either direction of the outer planets is because of this grand sextile and how profoundly chaotic, unstable, and revolutionary it is. And we are in that mix so fully because, we are consciousness itself. And so if there's this like rock'em sock'em setup, and certainly for 2025, as it sort of exploded in July and August, it's also going to diminish a little as planets go retrograde, and then diminish, hopefully, a little more when Uranus moves back into Taurus and Neptune and Saturn move back into Pisces. Certainly, when that happens in the fall, the timbre of the revolution will change, and it might not be as diminished as I'm saying now. We'll sort of see when we get there, but it certainly is going to shift. And on Friday, Uranus is going to turn around and retrograde at 1 degree of Gemini, and that is another signal, after Saturn did it last week, that there's backward movement. The explosion is dimming just a tiny bit. Uranus will go backwards till early February. He'll go direct in Taurus, and then he'll hit Gemini for good in at the end of April next year. So for those of you who do honor outer planet retrogrades, and it's great with me if you do, I don't because I don't feel them, but if you feel them, then I respect and honor that. So for those of you who will, and those of you for whom this is valuable information, Uranus goes retrograde Friday. So the total full moon eclipse is Sunday. It's exact at 11:09 a.m. Pacific time, and this is a Pisces full moon. So just start with the basics of if the sun is in Virgo, then our conscious awareness is focused on our health, our daily routine, being of service, how our life feels as a day-to-day thing. If your life is more vibrant, each day feels good. If your life sucks, each day feels like, an onerous hellhole. And that's Virgo. And so that's what we're aware of when the sun is in Virgo. So if Virgo is about the precisions of daily life, Pisces is about the energy that's in the unconscious. It's Neptune's ruling sign. So this is, when I use the word unconscious, I'm talking about everything that comes through the mystery to and through and as us, like creative inspiration, the power of dreams, what you connect to in a spiritual practice, what you rely on. If you're a creative individual, that inspiration has to come from somewhere, and Pisces is what allows that. And the most important thing about this full moon and the Pisces moon in our current landscape, this is the polarity of flesh-spirit, where our awareness is on flesh, us in bodies, and the full moon is spirit comes along and says, what do you have to release to have a more vibrant experience of your daily living? But Pisces also represents the collective itself. The idea that we are all one is a Pisces invention. When you harm someone else through this principle, you are harming yourself. And when someone steps onto the spiritual path at a high level and they tap into their human empathy, The Pisces consciousness allows them, us, me, you, hopefully, to see the world as a global community where we are all one, even with our enemies. Hard to do. I'd like to say all the time, I'm not the one you send in to have the conversation that's difficult between two sides. But I'm certainly the person who can tell you that I've been saying this since last year when we were preparing for the North Node, our future, to be in Pisces. I said, it's going to be a shithole, kids. You need your spiritual practice as primary, or I don't know how you're going to get through. So put that idea smack dab into this full moon and eclipse and know that part of what we will be releasing, or what is available to be releasing, is any critical, judgmental, judgy kind of thinking that Virgo is fond of. And find a way to let go of those colors in your psyche so that you can feel the oneness, the compassion that we all deserve. So now let's just talk about what an eclipse is for a second. So this shadow that we're passing through at the eclipses, it's not like it appears at eclipse season. It's there all the time. You know, if we could see the solar system from above, we would see this big light everywhere, and then you'd see the Earth and Moon and this shadow behind us. It's when the angles are just right, we pass through that shadow, and that's an eclipse. So how that works, like, geometrically is we've got this plane that the Earth is on. We call it the ecliptic. So the Earth sits in this ecliptic, and it's tilted a little bit, 23 degrees. That's why we have seasons. So you've got this orbital path that the Earth is moving on, and I just want you to imagine this as like an ellipse-shaped path that the Earth is on. Mm-hmm. If you're driving, don't close your eyes.
Yeah.
Now, the moon that orbits around the Earth is on a different angular path around the sun. So it's when those paths cross that we have an eclipse. In fact, I just did my Nodes of the Moon workshop. It's still available if you want to find out about how to work with the nodes of the moon a little bit. I had this great graphics that just shows this idea that there are these two ellipse-shaped orbits that don't match each other, and they have these places where they intersect. And when the sun is aligned with one of those places where the intersection happens, we have an eclipse. So every 6 months, the sun is near one of these nodes. And we know that the nodes are different. One is the south node of the past, and one is the north node of the future. Now, there's some confusion around this out there about whether an eclipse is a north node or a south node eclipse. Mm-hmm. I'm going to clear that up. In fact, because this full moon has the moon near the north node. Don't let anybody say this is a north node eclipse. It's not. And here's why. The entire eclipse season, whether it's 2, 3, or 4 eclipses, because there can be that many, in any season has the sun, our conscious awareness, near a node. This one is the south node. So even in a full moon, when the moon is across the way near the north node, the eclipses are only valuable to what we are consciously aware of, and then we sort of like lie down in the unconscious power of the lunation for like the shift or the release. So the way I was taught about eclipse seasons is that it's where the sun is that counts, because we're aware of whether we're looking at the past or looking at the future, because the sun is what we are aware of and the nodes point in the directions that they are. So this is a south node eclipse season, which means this full moon is very much about releasing things from your past. And given the Virgo sign, that means, you know, wounds and childhood stuff and anything that has inhibited you over the years can be dropped and released. And when we set new moon intentions, and I'll be saying this all again in a few weeks, it's near the South Node so that we're going to speak into being our intentions that are now possible because of where we've been. Right. So it'd be more like, I'm making this up. I would set more intentions about like who I am as a spiritual teacher based on my history and what led me here, as opposed to what's new that I brand new thing that I want to intend. Now, here's another thing I'm going to say about outer planet retrogrades that I think will surprise some of you. This full moon is set up to be reasonably close by conjunction to Saturn and Neptune. The orb is 11 degrees, and that is way too wide to be like a real, actual conjunction, but it's there in Pisces where Saturn is, and Neptune is in Aries, and will join Saturn in a few weeks. So because the sun and the moon are like pointing all of this eclipse energy next to Saturn and Neptune, then it is interesting to me that everybody's retrograde. So you've got Pluto and Uranus in a trine, and that trine is like almost exact. That's a big part of this hot summer. Now, they're never going to hit the exact trine this year. They'll do that next year, but good enough for the girls I date. So in a full moon release that goes deeply into the unconscious because of the Pisces archetype, has fast change Uranus and slow deep change Pluto working together like they're singing a duet. Because they're all retrograde, then you can think of the outer landscape that is so crazy right now is, how shall I say this? We are able to hold it internally more because the planets that are creating the setup are all faced backwards. To me, that means they're in the unconscious. If they're in the unconscious, then we can tap into the big energy of wild change that comes from these planets working so well together this year and next year. So just remember that as you sort of go to work with this eclipse, that part of what you may want to do is to actualize that idea of internalizing the outer landscape and sort of asking your psyche and soul, what has to be released inside of me in order to meet and match the demands of a world that is in revolutionary change. And I'll leave you with this, something else that I'm going to be talking about in a couple of weeks in the new moon that's coming. Black Moon Lilith is almost in an exact trine with Jupiter right now. So you've got Jupiter on Sunday at 19 degrees and 3 minutes of Cancer, and Black Moon Lilith at 18 degrees, 21 minutes of Scorpio. That's an orb of less than a degree, meaning it's a very exact trine. It's like a triangle you'd make with a pencil if you weren't paying attention too much. So that means that the shadow point that holds everything we would shove down because of shame, our sexuality energy that we are, in fact, not quite maybe ready to hold and embrace. That's the nature of this shadow point that exists in between the earth and the moon. So it represents material that's unconscious, but that spills out into our direct personal experience, including the direct collective personal experience of the earth herself. So you've got Black Moon Lilith sextiling the South Node, which means looking at your shadow and being with it is what will help you release the past, and the same sort of posture with respecting that your unconscious has all sorts of information and wisdom for you if you're not afraid to look at the unlookables and the scary parts of your psyche. But as you do, you are well ushered into the next chapter, North Node. Now, Mars is going to be squaring Jupiter and opposing Chiron. on a pure energetic level, that makes the energy of the weekend and into next week pure over-the-top madness. Mars is activation and movement and choices and actual, people in bodies doing stuff. And Jupiter has only one shadow, which is excess and overvaluing things and getting distracted by the shiny thing when really you're overvaluing that and need to focus on something else. So Mars in a very loose opposition with Chiron will certainly say that the wounds are up a little bit, and that might inspire some escapism approaches or desires that are a little over the top and maybe not yours. So try to keep things right-sized as you move through the weekend and understand that our personal wounds do impact what we're capable of activating, and just trust. You got a full moon capable of really diving into your psyche for a surgery that's amplified by it being an eclipse, and the sort of juiciness of Jupiter's help is like this propulsion into the future that then we'll get to enjoy at the new moon up ahead. But it might hurt, and it might be a little bit intense in the feelings. You've got a decent amount of water in the atmosphere, and it's a watery moon. Expect tears, but also expect change and transformation at the deepest level. Have at it.
Did you know that Michael has a daily astro alert? If you enjoy hearing the weekly astrology, you might like knowing more about each day. When you subscribe for the daily astro alerts, you'll get an in-depth explanation of the day's astrology sent right to your email. Subscriptions are only $10 a month, or you can purchase the yearly subscription at the reduced price of $100. To subscribe, head over to michaellennox.com. All right, it's dream segment time. Every week, Dr. Michael will interpret dreams that are sent in via email or take a live caller. If you would like your dream interpreted on the podcast, you can go ahead and email us at dreams@michaellennox.com. Hopefully your dream will make it onto the show. This week we have an email and dream from Leah. So she says, "Hello, here is some context. I've been trying to communicate both with my higher self and internally with my younger, wounded inner child."
Love that. Keep going.
Here's my dream.
Oh, okay. That's the context.
Yeah, that's just the context.
Right.
Okay. I take a substance, something edible, to help me commune with spirit. I'm walking around looking at the ground for something that could be a message. I find a stand-up mirror. I am standing at an angle to it and only looking at the lower half. The mirror is black and I can't see anything reflected in it. I realize I'm holding a walking cane in my right hand. It just appeared there. I wasn't using it when I was walking around. I tapped the mirror with the cane and the surface of it shifted like liquid. I stepped through that mirror and then was falling in complete darkness. After a moment of falling, I screamed and then I woke up. Thanks, Leah.
Thanks. That reminds me of a
She
friend
just ends with,
teased
"Thanks."
me about my signature in my emails. It's Love and Blessing, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
And we were at a game night and he was going on and on about like, I can't believe you didn't sing the thing. Love and Blessings, Michael. Thanks. I love this dream. First of all, I love the context too, right? So right up my alley, looking up and looking down. That's the way to go. If you don't look inward at the wounded inner child, you can't be free. And with freedom comes an ability to look up and embrace the spiritual connection fully. So one thing that strikes me at the top of the dream is because she takes a substance that's going to help her commune, then we know that she's communing, right? It's very clear that this substance will help her commune, and she takes it so that what follows we can trust, even if where the dream ends is kind of terrifying, and that might make someone sort of pull back and say, oh no. But we know it's a message from, spirit because she took the substance. Which also reminds me, by the way, of what can happen with plant medicine that can't happen with just self-investigation, even the deepest self-investigation. Like, I always love when someone will say, well, I like to do that without having to take the medicine. It's like, no, you can't do this. You can do what you do, but you will never do this without medicine.
Because it
you can't replicate.
Literally will take you to a different place.
You can't replicate a powerful psychedelic
Got it. Yeah.
with meditation. You just can't do it. I don't really know why I'm telling that story out of turn, but I'm reminded of this in the dream, that the taking of the edible to me is a reflection of a readiness for a deeper dive below and a higher dive above. The walking, looking at the ground for a message, to me, looks and feels like Leah just in her life. On the earth, in three-dimensional space, walking around like walking through her life, looking for messages, but she's stuck for looking them on the ground, right? That's it. There's a limit until she goes deeper. In fact, it's not where she gets the messages. Does she get a message looking at the ground? No, she finds a mirror and a cane. So the ground, she's beyond looking for messages on the ground, and there has to be something deeper. What is it? It's going to be shadow work at an even deeper level. What is the hallmark of shadow work is the mirror consciousness. It's the idea that everything that we see and perceive in our outside world is a reflection of what's inside of us. And when we get wild, mad, triggered by another person, it's shadow material. It's not them. They're just reminding us of something inside of us we haven't looked at yet that troubles us. And so we go into shadow work or inner child healing work, and we take those wounds out from behind us where we're hiding them, look at them and be with them, and then they become more integrated. And so the mirror in her dream becomes a message of, well, it's mirror work. It's about taking responsibility for what's inside of you will then reflect out into your world and in your life. So she expresses two things, right? First, she says she's only looking at the lower half, and then she says she can't see anything because it's black. Do I have that right?
Yes.
Well, the lower half is where our genitals are.
Oh.
So,
I didn't think about that.
When you think about the lower half and the upper half of the body, there's no mistaking the high stakes nature of the lower half is our sexuality.
Sure.
So there's something about having to look into the mirror, especially as it relates to, and I'll even add, groundedness. Knowing how to walk through life is also in the lower half, our legs and our feet. So this might not only be about sexuality and, sexual wounds. It might also be about just not feeling grounded in your walk. And that's something that needs to be addressed in shadow work. So the black mirror, that's not actual term in shadow work, but it ought to be. Isn't there that show, Black
Mirror, that is a show.
Well, that's a show about shadow stuff. It's about the mirror of shadow in the world with these tales of really dark, dystopian, shadowy things. And it's about mirroring our darker consciousness. That's what this mirror is for our dreamer, is that it's helping her see what she has to see, but there's sort of work to be done, because it's not like the regular mirrors of the three-dimensional world. It's got mystery to it. Like, I don't think that the mirror is black is a problem. I think the mirror is black because it's a black mirror exercise that her dream is talking to her about.
Okay.
So remember, the looking at the ground sort of implied something about how she's been walking through her life, and she's looking to connect with higher self and inner child. I think the mirror and the lower half might connect to something to do with inner child. And the looking on the ground for the message and then getting a walking stick as a kind of sacred object, to me, is reflecting a better ability to walk through life as a result of receiving this gift. Now it becomes more than just a walking stick. It's sort of a tool. She points it at the mirror and touches it. Now, there is a shadow phrase called the black needle. And in the black needle consciousness, that's the idea of you hold up the mirror so that the person can see everything that they, is reflecting out of them. And then the practitioner, the psychologist, the teacher, the helper, takes the black needle and points it exactly where the resistance is. So it's a phrase that says we do courageous shadow work and we allow life, psyche, teachers, self to point right to where there's a challenge. So the black mirror, to me, is an advanced tool for contemplating self in a big way. And then the walking stick is just like the gift of helping her move about the world. So she takes that tool and sort of asks for more information about the shadow or the mirror. Like, the touching of it, to me, strikes me as curiosity and willingness. Now that she's got the tool to be helpful. So the fact that she steps into the mirror is just a fabulous sacred image of surrendering to the process of really looking at yourself unabashedly. And so the falling in the darkness is her on the way to the void. And she fears that the void will be all dark and blackness, so she screams. And then obviously that wakes her up. So I do think the dream is showing her that the work is at hand. She's in it. She's got the tools she needs, and there's a clear readiness, including that the dream is showing her that some of the surrender might be quite frightening because we think the void is black. Guess what? The void is white. So how do I know that? What do I mean by that? In plant medicine work, which I never did in my earlier life, and I'm so grateful, I never answered the call when people would ask, do you want to do this in Topanga? We're going to Peru, come with. And I always was a no until I was a yes, only in the last, 8 years. And I remember working with medicine to get to a more open place, which is like getting toward the void. And when you're in fear, it's sort of a scary place. But I've been past that place. And when you get into the true void, it's all white. Meaning it's light and bright, and it's like the field of infinite possibility, like that scene in The Matrix when they're inside the computer program. It ain't black, it's white. It's open and available for like new imprinting. So the idea that Leah screamed in fear as she's falling through the darkness, that's fine, that she woke herself up before the imagined frightening thing. But I promise you, as she, and if she lets go even more and just lets the fall continue, the void of darkness gives way to the true void, which is creative and filled with possibility. And this is why we clean out the inner child wounds and make efforts to get to higher levels of self, because the benefit is outrageous and the work is worth it. Great dream.
Thank you for listening to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. You can find us on Apple Music, the iHeartRadio app, and anywhere you find your favorite shows. Head on over to michaellennox.com for information on astrology readings, the daily Astro Alert subscription, upcoming classes, and to join the mailing list.